Question 9 is asking about operating systems. An operating system like Windows or Mac OS. Right? So what is it? And then it goes say, through the different parts of it and explain what they do. Right. Cool. Well, I gave some examples there. But really what it does, it's an interface between hardware and applications, software, hardware and software. And also an interface between you and your computer. Right? It's kind of what goes in between it. Which you're like, it does, yeah, but what does it actually do? I actually found the best way of understanding operating systems myself was knowing which things don't have an operating system. And then I could be like, oh, yeah, okay, so let's look at things that don't. So microbits, for example, do not have their own operating system. They piggyback off Windows. So maybe Chrome OS or Mac OS or even just Chrome browser opens up your makecode.org and you can download stuff. So it's got some kind of IDE, an interface for the computer to work with the user to make it work or whatever. And the same thing for Arduino. Arduino has this cool little thing to put your code in. You press run, it downloads, it compiles, it runs it. But these things don't have their own operating system. Like they still run on. You need Windows to work them. Okay, you don't need Windows at all to use a Raspberry Pi. Because it comes with its own, I'm gonna say version of Windows. It's Linux, not Windows. Okay, it's a different operating system. Now, here's a really good point as well. Like, why don't Arduino and Microbit have an operating system? What's the downside? The downside is operating systems are what make computers bad. It's what they give them their well, it makes them, I suppose, super powerful and they can do things. But oh my god, it makes them rubbish. The reason you hate computers, you don't hate computers, you hate operating systems, right? Because that's the thing that's juggling a gazillion things and always seems to mess up, right? If you have an Arduino controlling a drone, which you can do, it's going towards the wall and it notices it's going off balance, right? Like twitch response, really, really fast, millisecond response. It can look at its gyroscope and go, I'm about to crash into the wall and corrects itself, right? If you try and put a Windows PC with some fans, it's the same with even a Raspberry. A Raspberry Pi can technically fit, some fans and like motors. But if it's flying towards the wall in the same situation, it'll go to read its gyroscope, and at that moment it'll go, you know what I haven't done? Check my email. I want to see if there's any YouTube videos out recently, and I also want to bam, and it hits into the wall. Okay, it's juggling a gazillion tasks, and that is a real downside with having operating systems. And they crash, like they blue screen. There's different ways of dying, but that's what happens. Okay, so whereas your Casio watch doesn't crash, well, the new ones might because they probably have like Android OS or something like that, but the old ones didn't in the 80s. Your speedometer in your car doesn't just go blue screen. Maybe the new ones will, maybe the Tesla ones will, but like the old ones were they didn't have like all these tasks they were kind of juggling and going between in trying to prioritize in parallel. They just had one job, they did it again and again and again, and it always works. And that's why not all computers are bad, it's just operating systems are bad. Okay, but they do their best. They be trying. So let's look at the marking scheme for the first little bit. So it just says an OS, operating system, is something that controls the hardware of the computer. Yeah, right. An interface between software and hardware, I said that. An interface between the user and the machine, that's between you and your computer. All right, let's talk about now each layer, okay? Because then it says talk about the input-output management. That's talking about your mice. Your file system, memory management, and processor scheduling. Okay, cool. Well, actually, the process, that's what I was talking about there at the end of like when it's trying to juggle loads of things. Let's go. Input, output. The best way to do this actually is just open up Windows. I got this window open here. By the way, if you want to do that yourself, you hit Windows sign, pause break, and it tells you your stats. Okay, so first thing here, input management. So I click device manager, and you can see here is all of my ins and outs. All right, so let's say I've got my mouse here. I go properties, and I can look at the driver. So I might need to update the driver. Will I try and what happens if I do this? Search automatically. Yes, great. It's the greatest driver of all time. This never works. But sometimes when your stuff breaks, updating the driver, that's a little bit of software to work, maybe your printer. Now, the good thing about Windows as an operating system is that a lot of these drivers are available online, and it'll go, that looks to me like a printer. Let me give you a generic printing driver, which is a bit of software that works for most things, you know? And if you have a Linux computer, that will be living hell because loads of them just aren't supported for Linux. And you'll be spending all your life looking for drivers to get speakers to work with everything. So good thing about Linux is open source OS. A bad thing is, oh my God, constantly looking for drivers. Ubuntu is a little bit better, but still. So it's inputs, outputs. And drivers. Let's talk about the file system. Well, the file system is, it's Windows. It's what you're looking at here with all the folders. I'm not going to talk too much about that, other than the fact that, I suppose it handles security. If you right click on something, you can say who has access to it, under properties. All that is managed by the file system. Yeah, I always find that the most annoying thing on a phone is it's so hard to find. It's getting a little bit better now, but especially with Apple, where the frick are my files? I put something on. I remember the first time I made a YouTube video, I got a lot of photos, videos. I went to just plug them into my PC as I'd like my photos, and it was like, please sign up for iCloud. No, I want my photos. Yes, but you need your credit card information to get the photos that and it's actually, yeah. So that file system management is super important part of an OS, right? Cool. And I suppose the next thing is memory. Let's talk about memory for a moment. If you go into you can see here, that's how much is installed. But when it says memory management, what's it doing? Okay, well, click into Gitterberger Advanced System Settings here. All right. And you can see under Performance Settings, you can change how much virtual memory you are allocating. So I've got 24 gigs of RAM, which is a lot, but that's because that is needed for rendering videos. If you do lots of videos, it's handy. It's also how many Chrome tabs you can have open. Virtual memory, however, is I can take, let's say I've got 500 gigabytes of let's just say hard disk space. Okay, I can allocate a tiny bit of that and say, hey computer, if I run out of RAM, you could always just have this reserved to be pretend RAM. Okay, so it's kind of a in between. It's not quite as good as actual. It won't make up for your lack of actual RAM, but it certainly helps. Okay, you could allocate. Now I've allocated here. You can see 3584. So it's 3.5 gigabytes roughly of hard disk space. I can't put files or games on. That's cordoned off as this is backup kind of virtual RAM. So there you go. It's memory allocation. The last one, I suppose, is scheduling and tasks and stuff like that. Fun task or fun thing to know. If you're at a computer lab, you can automate a task that happen on a computer at 1 o'clock every day. I remember in DCU we did this where you could just schedule a web page with a certain image to open up at a certain time every day. So you can definitely have fun with that. If you go Control Alt Delete and go into Task Manager, this is part of the stuff you can see here. What's running this recording. Bing is good for looking at things on your network, and there's loads of things here. But then also you can see all of the services that are currently stopped and started and running, like a printer spooler or something like that. So that's things that the operating system is doing, or juggling which user is doing what. Okay. The resource monitor is a nice thing to open as well. It can tell you how much of your network you're using. So for example, if you're wondering, hey, is this thing using up my internet? you know, on your PC, you can click this and you can see how much of your network is being used up. So it's a good way if something is like there's I don't know, some virus or someone's hacked you and they're downloading some in the background, you can be like, hey, why am I using like 10 megabits per second? Like, what's doing that? And then you can click on it and go like file location and find out where it is, and or just Google the name of it and you're like, yeah, okay. So that's processes, and it decides then what's the most important thing. That's your operating system does. There's a lot of cool things you can do. Like, for example, I know a lot of gaming computers come with software there for your processes that say, don't update Windows when I'm playing a game, you know, especially like antivirus stuff completely like pulls your computer down to a near stop. So, yeah, it's, you know, that sort of thing. Cool. So I think let's just have a quick look at what the marking scheme says, but I think we've talked about almost all of them now. So input output management, that was the device manager, we looked at that. It controls the user interface, graphics, screen size, resolution, and all that kind of stuff. Peripheral devices, that's through drivers, we talked about that. File system keeps tracks of where things are. Controls access, security, we said that. Yeah, and then the memory management, we talked about like the virtual memory and all that stuff. Cool. So that's operating systems.